I am Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. I am Michelle Chalfant. Happy to be here with you on the final Thursday in September. Yes, indeed, this month flew by. And also, just 5 short weeks until we do the last Adult Chair workshop. The last Adult Chair Live event is happening in Nashville, Tennessee, November 3rd through 5th. We would love to have you. If you love this model and you want to learn more about it and you want to learn really how to use it for yourself, this is the place to come. It's a very, very experiential workshop. You will learn a lot, I promise, and you will walk away having a really deep understanding of how to plug this into your daily life. You can find out more about our event at theadultchair.com/Nashville. So today on the show, you know what? We have a really cool guest. I'm going to use that word because she is very cool. Her name is Ariel Garten, and we are talking all about the brain, meditation, sleep, one of my favorite subjects actually, and a device called Muse and how Muse can help with all of these things. We talked all about what happens in the brain when we meditate, the 5 essential things you can do to sleep well every single night. And this is a big one. How do you overcome what your brain tells you, really? Because God knows our brain is telling us things all day long, all the time. And she talks about the neuroscience of anxiety, fear, and bias and how you can overcome it. She has a fascinating story. Let me tell you a little bit about Ariel Garten, and we will jump right into the show. She's probably one of the most interesting people you will meet. Ariel is a neuroscientist, a mom, a former psychotherapist, former fashion designer, and the co-founder and visionary of an amazing and highly successful health tech startup called Muse. Muse tracks your brain activity as you meditate and gives you real-time feedback while also guiding you into the quote-unquote zone and solving the problem most of us have when starting a meditation practice, telling us when we're doing it right. I know we all have that problem. And now Muse is helping its users improve their sleep. Muse is now used by hundreds of thousands of people to start or deepen their meditation practice, including by the Mayo Clinic. The new second generation Muse S uses advanced EEG technology to track how well you focus, sleep, and recharge. And the recently launched digital sleeping pill presents the latest in non-pharmaceutical sleep support, providing immediate and intelligent assistance with falling asleep and nighttime interruptions. So important, you guys. With no formal business background, Ariel personally raised $18 million to found Muse from Silicon Valley investors, as well as Ashton Kutcher. Ariel and Muse have been featured in over 1,000 articles, including CNN 3 times, Forbes, Fortune, Popular Science, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, GQ, Men's Health, O Magazine, and Wired. Ariel's mission in life is to help people understand how their brain and mind work, both the nuts and the bolts and neurons, and how that plays out in the messy and beautiful human experience of living. She inspires people to understand that they can accomplish anything they want by understanding what actually goes on in their own mind. Ariel is also the co-host of the Untangle podcast. Here we go with the very lovely Ariel Garten. So welcome to the Adult Chair podcast, Ariel Garten. It's so nice to have you on today.
It is a joy and pleasure to be here, Michelle. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're talking about some fun stuff today. Some of the things that I love to talk about. We were talking prior to the show, anxiety, meditation, and I was kind of blown away. I'm not going to lie to hear that you know a lot about neuroscience, which you are a neuroscientist. Incredible. Yes. So
thank you.
I love this. So we're going to have a deep conversation and then we're going to talk about the Muse. So we got a lot to talk about today. So let's start out with, because you are someone that really is a brain expert, but let's start out with like, what the heck is meditation? And my audience obviously knows I have a lot of meditations on my site, but I want to get your perspective on what it is and what does it do for the brain?
Sure. So meditation is not a weird or woo-woo thing. Meditation is a practice or a training that leads to healthy and positive mind states. There are many different forms of meditation that you might have heard of, like focused attention meditation, body scan, walking meditation. What they all have in common is that you are training your brain to do something specific. Now, the most common meditation form is focused attention, and most people have probably done this. That's when you put your attention on your breath and your mind wanders away from your breath. You notice that your mind has wandered and you bring your attention back. So it's super simple. You're just attending to your breath. It could be your breath or a candle, any object of your attention. Eventually, your mind will wander from that. It's your job to notice that, oh, I'm no longer meditating. I'm now mind wandering, and bring your attention back. Now, this seems incredibly simple, but from that, some really profound things start happening in your brain. So for one, your attention starts in the front of your head. It's your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that's responsible for being able to really maintain your attention. And so as you do this meditation practice, you end up strengthening your prefrontal cortex, strengthening your meditation part. Sorry, I assume you added this. You end up strengthening your prefrontal cortex, strengthening the part of your brain that's associated with your attention. You also end up down-regulating a part of your brain called the amygdala, which I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more about later.
Yes,
and that's the part of your brain that's responsible for fear and fight or flight. So this very simple meditation exercise actually leads to some really transformational impacts in your brain.
Awesome. So clear this up for people. I've said this many times. I want to hear your perspective on this, but number one, meditation is a practice. It's not something that we can ever master, is what I say. Who can ever stop their thoughts? And this is what people think. Well, I can't stop my thoughts, so I can't meditate. Well, that's not what meditation is. Meditation is the practice of witnessing thoughts and learning how to witness and not engage in those thoughts. Do you agree?
100%.
Amen.
Yes, I often joke that it's probably easier to levitate than it is to just have no thoughts. So, meditation is not about not thinking. Meditation is about learning to observe your thinking and then be able to make a different choice. So most of us go through our lives just on autopilot. We go through our lives with all of these thoughts in our head, and we're thinking about the grocery list and going to the gym and how we didn't go to the gym and how awful we are and how great this, on and on and on. Now, in the course of meditating, what you're doing is you're choosing where you put your attention, and it's not on your thoughts, it's on your breath. So you're focusing on your breath, and then you'll have a thought that comes up. And in real life, we just are like, grocery list, right? Okay, I need apples and oranges. Then there's that dinner party, and oh, George doesn't like apples, and. Yeah. In meditation, you go, thought about the grocery list. I see you thought, I'm not going to go there right now. Bye-bye. Yeah. Back to my breath. And then the next thought comes up about, donuts or Facebook or whatever. And you're like, oh, I see you, but you know what? I'm not going to get up. I'm not going to check Facebook. I'm not going to go eat a donut. I see you thought, I'm not going to get roped in. Bye-bye. See you later. Come back to my breath. And so what you're learning to do is observe that you have thoughts, separate yourself from that thinking. Don't automatically get caught up in it. Let it go, and then choose where you're putting your attention. And the more you practice this very simple task, the more you're able to recognize, hey, I don't need to think all the thoughts that are in my head. And the more you're able to recognize, hey, those super stressful thoughts I'm having, I don't need to think about them either right now. And you have a choice to actually move your mind away from them and onto something more relevant for you.
Mm. So when and thank you for all that. That's beautiful. When someone starts to meditate, when do they start noticing that it's easier to bring themselves back to presence? Is it different for every human, or are there studies around this? What do you know about that?
Totally different for every human.
I thought you were going to say that.
So it also depends how long you've been meditating. It depends how comfortable you are simply sitting and observing. These are skills. You could ask somebody, how easy is it to play basketball? For me, it's really darn hard. For my 5-year-old son, it's apparently incredibly easy. He gets it like this. So, but the more he practices and I practice, the better we both get. So another very common question I get that's related to that is, how long should you meditate for?
Yes. Great.
Now, just like going to the gym, if you haven't done it before, you want to just start off easy. So you want to start with 3-4 minutes a day. That's it. Really, really simple. Just sit down, do the practice. You can even start at 2 minutes and then slowly work yourself up, minute by minute, until you're doing an average of 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day. In the studies that we've done with Muse, we've demonstrated that 10 minutes a day of meditation over 6 weeks can improve your attention. It can decrease your stress, improve your self-awareness about your body, improve your sleep, and more.
Wow. Okay. That's really impressive, because I read all kinds of things. Like some people say 20 minutes. Some people say, there's so many different figures out there as far as how long. I love 10 minutes, because who doesn't have 10 minutes a day? Like, it's not a lot of time.
And let's bring it down even further to 5 minutes, because for some, 10 minutes is super scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, there's the old adage about, how do you get yourself to the gym? Don't worry about getting to the gym. Just put on your shoes. And then once your shoes are on, you can make the next step.
Yes.
So you can start off super small, do 1 minute of meditation, and you're like, celebrate, like, yeah, I meditated for a minute. I did it. And then the next day, do 2 minutes.
Yes.
And just build yourself up.
10 minutes is easy to do. Tell us what happens in the brain. You talk about the amygdala. So once we've meditated for 10 minutes, and I get it, everyone is coming into meditation from a different place. Like some people live in fight or flight all day long. Some people have very little of it. So it's like everyone is different. But unanimously, what happens, and I know we talked about prefrontal cortex. So as we meditate, and is there a certain type of meditation that we have to do for 10 minutes a day in order to have the most beneficial outcome for the brain?
Sure. So different forms of meditation impact different areas of the brain. I'm going to be talking mainly here about focused attention meditation, because that is incredibly impactful. And it's actually what most of the studies have used within their paradigms. And so let's back up a second and talk about something important that you just said, which was the amygdala and fight or flight. Many of us live in fight or flight. So the amygdala is a part of our brain. It's kind of in the center, right above your ears. There's got 2, 1 on each side. They're really small. It's a part of your brain that's responsible for your fear response. And its job is to kind of scan the world and look for things that might be dangerous. And these could be real dangers like fires and snakes and tigers. It could be perceived dangers like a picture of a snake or a tiger. Or it could be, just sort of made up dangers, like an email comes in from your boss and you just get this like huge surge of scaredness or fear because, oh my God, it's my boss. What might he say? And he's probably saying like, have a nice day, go for lunch, whatever.
Yeah.
And so our amygdala is really there to save us from the bad things in the world, but it goes way overboard. And it generates the thoughts about things that are scary in order to try to keep us safe, which is great when there's a tiger there and your brain says, oh my God, tiger. And it keeps saying, where's the tiger? Where's the tiger? Where's the tiger? But when there's no tiger and it keeps saying it, it's really not helpful. Or when your boss is actually a nice person and you get scared every time the email comes in because your amygdala fires, it's not helpful. So in meditation, one of the things that we learn to do is to Notice when we have a sensation of fear, or notice when we have thoughts that are scary, like, oh my God, the boss email, oh my God, the tiger, and then be able to move our attention away from it. And over time, because you're not attending to these thoughts, your amygdala calms down and it stops sending you these messages. So you end up down regulating your amygdala and actually living in a place that is much calmer.
Wow.
At the same time, in meditation, you're strengthening your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that's responsible for attention we talked about. It's also the part of your brain that's responsible for rational thinking, being able to plan and organize. It's really our higher order processing. And so what we're able to do through a meditation practice is observe a situation, because we've had practice observing our thoughts. So when something happens, we can now observe the situation, observe our body's response. And rather than just running with the fear response that the amygdala gives you and letting the thoughts take you over, you're instead able to say, hey, these are just thoughts. Are these real? Let's move our attention away from the thoughts using your prefrontal cortex. Let's put it on something else. And over time, you calm down. And it's almost like the prefrontal cortex is the parent and the amygdala is the child. So, the amygdala, the child sees a shadow on the wall and starts freaking out. You as the parent is able to come in and say, it's just a shadow. It's not real. There's nothing to be afraid of. Shh, calm down. It's all good. And in the brain, we actually see that relationship start to develop through meditation, where in some studies, you can even see an improved thickness to the prefrontal cortex from a long-term meditator, a decreased activity, and in some cases, even decreased size of the amygdala, and improved amount of connections between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. So the prefrontal cortex, it's almost as if it's able to better regulate it and better able to say, everything's chill here. Shh, calm down. It's all good.
That's incredible. That is incredible. So talk about then, and when you say that I love the idea of them talking to each other, the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. That's incredible. When do you, again, is it like 6 months, a year? Do we have to meditate 10 years? When do you see this connection start happening?
Sure. So in one study by Dr. Sarah Lazar at Harvard, she demonstrated that an 8-week course of meditation was able to improve the density of gray matter in the brain.
Wow.
So that's the number of neural connections. So just 8 weeks of meditation led to actual change in the brain.
That's incredible.
Yeah. In terms of the thickness of the prefrontal cortex, for example, another study from Dr. Sarah Lazar looked at long-term meditators and was able to demonstrate that long-term meditators had thicker prefrontal cortices than those who were non-meditators. And I don't recall the exact time course in that study, but there's a third study by Dr. Eileen Luters, and she looked at long-term meditators, and she defined a long-term meditator as somebody who'd meditated for 5 years or more. And she was able to see that their brains looked on average 7.5 years younger.
Wow.
Yes.
That's
So
impressive.
5 years or more of meditation, on average, 7.5 years younger. So that meant, thicker prefrontal cortices, better cortical volume, better communication between the hemispheres, and on and on.
That's incredible. Wow. Okay. So many reasons to meditate. I love it. What do you find? You talk a lot about attention, right? What about people with really, and in this day and age, we have these things. I'm holding up my phone, right? Everything in our lives, whether it be the phone, really, it's the phone, it's the email, it's the dinging, it's the social media, it's all of the things that actually, it seems like take us in the reverse of where we want to go. So instead of being able to hold our attention, we can't focus like we used to. So you look at people that maybe don't even have ADHD, but still now I'm finding we have issues with focusing, all the way over to ADHD. I'm assuming you're finding that meditation, of course, also helps these things as well. Yes.
Absolutely.
I thought.
So tons of studies that demonstrate that meditation improves your attention. So you're better able to sustain your attention. You're better able to choose what to attend to. And you're better able to focus for long periods of time and get to the end of a project. So For me, I remember early on in my meditation practice, actually just after I started really meditating seriously with Muse for about really quite a short period, but it was right after we developed it. I was writing a long format essay. And in the past, anybody who walked past my desk, it would be like, what do you need? What do you need? I'd always be looking up and it would take me forever to write long format things. And this time I sat down and I got through it in like 45 minutes and I was shocked. And it was because I had been training my brain very specifically that when a thought came up or a distraction came up, instead of following it like I would normally do, I could just let it go and come on back to task, let it go and come on back to task. And so it was like game changing.
Wow, that's incredible. Incredible. Okay, let's move over to sleep. How about that? This is
awesome.
I am a sleep Nazi. Like all I want to do is get at least my 8 hours in every single night. I have an Aura ring. I do all the things. I've used Muse. I'm not sure if we introduce Muse or just talk about sleep first. What do you think?
Let's talk about Muse so people know what we are referring to here.
You've referenced it a few times. So talk about Muse. What is Muse?
Sure. So Muse is a brain sensing headband that helps you meditate and sleep. For those of you on the video, you can see them here.
On YouTube, you can see this. Yes.
Yeah. So this is the original Muse here. This is the Muse S. And basically they're slim little headbands that have EEG sensors on the forehead that read your brain activity and behind the ears and a bunch of other sensors in them. And what they're able to do for meditation is give you real-time feedback on your meditation. So you know when your mind is wandering and you know when you're focused in meditation. So it really serves to show you what's going on during your meditation practice, let you know what you're doing and how to improve your meditation, and then to reinforce you for paying attention. And then on the sleep side, it's able to track your sleep basically as effectively as a sleep lab almost. And it's like a sleep lab in your own bed. And it's able to give you beautiful meditations and guided content that we call digital sleeping pills that actually walk your brain into sleep. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, help you fall back asleep.
It's awesome, I have to say. It's really incredible. Yeah, for sure. So talk about what happens to the brain during sleep.
So there are two different things that put our brain to sleep. And learning about them is really important to help you understand how to optimize your sleep. So as you're going to sleep, the first thing that happens is you're riding your boost in melatonin. So throughout the day, when the sun is out, your melatonin levels are low. And then before bedtime, about 90 minutes before, when the sun starts to dim, your melatonin levels rise. And when they rise high enough, you end up falling asleep. And then throughout the night, they're high. As you start to wake up in the morning, as light hits your eyes from the outside, they lower and you wake up. And then there's a second mechanism that's super important for sleep that also happens in the brain, and that is called your sleep pressure. And it's governed by a molecule called adenosine. So during the day, adenosine levels start out low in the morning. And then throughout the day, adenosine builds up and binds to its receptors. And by night, there is so much adenosine bound, there's so much sleep pressure that your brain cannot help but fall asleep. And then throughout the night, the adenosine unbinds until in the morning, there's very little adenosine bound and you feel nice and awake. So those two mechanisms are actually the things that govern when you fall asleep, how long you sleep, and how easily you wake up.
So tell us about the people that are listening saying, well, first of all, because I'm clear about this, how many hours of sleep do we need to function well and to really nourish our brain and to function well the next day?
Okay, so it is different for every person, but it is generally about 8 hours. For some people, it's 7.5. For some people, it's 7. For a rare number of people, it's 6.5, but that's not very common. And for some, it's 9 or 10. And so for those of you out there who say, oh, I'm great on 6.5 hours of sleep, that may be the case. But if you started regularly sleeping 7 or 7.5 hours, you would probably see improvements in your mind and body, in your cognition and in your physical health. So try to aim for 7.5, 8. Your body should naturally know when to wake up if you have all the right pieces in place. Now, one more caveat, as you age, you end up sleeping less and less at night. Doesn't mean that you need less sleep. It means it's just harder to get that sleep. So you might wake up after 6 hours, but then need to take a nap midday to stay in top form.
That's interesting. So it's not that we don't need less, it's just the body doesn't sleep as long.
Exactly.
When do we see that start to shift? What age does that start happening?
Around 50, it starts to become more obvious.
Okay.
And then 60, even more obvious, and then 70, very obvious. And that's why older people tend to nap during the day.
So what happens that we sleep less after age 50?
There's a range of things that happen in your brain as you age.
We know hormones are at play, that's for sure.
Hormones are at play, decreasing mitochondrial function. So, your brain's able to not metabolize its energy as effectively, lacking connections in the brain. There's a unfortunate range of things that happen as we age, which, by the way, although there's no magic pill for stopping the aging of your brain, doing the standard things that we know, like eating well, exercising, so key for your brain, and keeping it stimulated, actually are the things that stave off aging. Everybody's like, what can I do to stop the aging of my brain? It's like the things that we know that are good for your body are also good for your brain. And of course, meditating, as we saw, could create a brain that is up to 7.5 years younger. Yes.
Meditation. Yeah. So, because I'm thinking about the people that are listening going, I can't, I only sleep 5 hours a night, and maybe they're not even 50, or the people that are over 50, like, what would you say to them? So you just gave us some good ideas, but will Muse help those people that just can't sleep well or wake up in the middle of the night? Do you find that?
Yeah, it has been demonstrated to help people just like that. So in a study that we did with Dr. Adrian Owen's lab, they demonstrated that Muse improved quality of sleep by 20%, including decreasing the amount of time it took to fall asleep, decreasing the amount of wake ups in the night, and improving overall length of time.
Wow.
So for people who have difficulty sleeping, there's a range of reasons why that might be. The number one thing to look at, the very first thing, is caffeine. So remember, I told you about adenosine binding and building your sleep pressure? Well, caffeine actually blocks the adenosine. So your sleep pressure can't build up. And so it becomes harder to fall asleep. And when you do, you're not sleeping as deeply. Wow. So like the easiest first quick fix to make is no caffeine after noon. I know that could be hard, but it might just be the thing that most easily tips your sleep over. The second thing is look at your anxiety levels. So most people say, oh, I can't sleep because my brain's just racing. Or you wake up in the middle of the night and you keep thinking about work. Or you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, oh my God, I'm awake. It's 2 a.m. Oh no.
That's exactly what I do. Oh my God, I'm in the middle of my deep sleep phase. What am I doing? Why am I awake? Right. Yeah. And then that makes it worse, as we know.
Yep. And then that wave of anxiety only wakes you up and makes it harder to sleep. So learning how you manage your anxiety is really key for teaching you to sleep. So with meditation, for example, you can meditate before you fall asleep, and that helps you quiet your mind. And how we got to building a sleep product is we asked people with using Muse, when do you meditate most often? And one of the most popular answers was at night to help quiet their mind before they go to sleep.
Interesting. Huh. I didn't know that.
So then we built this purpose-built device that actually helped people fall asleep by being able to quiet their mind. And then if you wake up in the middle of the night, again, you don't want to start engaging the thoughts. You want to just be able to do the same thing you do in meditation, let your thoughts go, disengage them, breathe deeply, and fall back asleep. So the Muse digital sleeping pills help you do that and walk your brain back into sleep.
I love that. Digital sleeping pill. I love that. That's a great term. Okay. So you just gave us the 5 essential things you can do to sleep well every night. Did you not? You just told us.
There's 2 more.
Oh, 2 more.
3 of them.
Yeah.
One more is going to be managing your sleep schedule. So most people are kind of willy-nilly about sleep. You're like, I can, fall asleep at 2 a.m. one night, midnight another night. That just confuses your brain and body and doesn't allow you to actually set your circadian rhythm properly. So try to go to bed at night at the same time and wake up at the same time. And then the final one is you want to manage the light in your environment. So remember I said melatonin responds to light, and you want it to be dark 90 minutes before you go to bed. So 90 minutes before you go to bed, start to dim the lights in your environment. And that's going to trigger your melatonin to say, hey, it's getting dim time. It's going to be nighttime soon. It'll start to build up and it'll be higher when you fall asleep, making it easier to fall asleep. And then keep your bedroom dark throughout the night, which is going to keep your melatonin high. And then open your curtains first thing in the morning, which will drop your melatonin, which will then help it set to be ready the next night at the same time to help you fall asleep.
I remember reading something one time that said, even having like a clock on in the room, like, because I am someone that I have blackout shades, like it is pitch dark in my room, but we used to have like a clock with the red little lights on it so you could see what time it is. But I read something, I think it said that the mitochondria maybe gets activated even with a little dot in the room. Is that true? Any
So,
sort of light, like a little dot or from like a heating pad, even like that little red dot. I got rid of everything. So I wanted your opinion on that. I was like,
yeah, I wouldn't
everything's
be
out of the
too
room.
neurotic about it.
Yeah.
So, one of
I
the
do get
important
neurotic
things,
about my sleep. That's why I'm asking.
so one of the important things about sleep is not be too neurotic about it, because then you wake
Yeah,
up and you're like, oh my God, the thing is red, and then you have anxiety. So
exactly.
there's a certain amount of just accepting what is. You
Mhm.
know, some people live with the streetcar that goes past them. I once lived on a street with a streetcar that went past me. And the first 3 nights that I lived there, I'm like, oh my God, I'll never sleep. And then eventually I
Mm.
just forgot about it. And when I forgot about it, it's like, hey, I sleep every night. That's so weird.
Mm.
And I'm now I am breastfeeding. I just had a kid. I'm, in my mid 40s. And so my hormones are starting to change. And I now get really hot at night and sweaty.
Oh,
And of course, one of the things that keeps you up at night is being hot and sweaty. And you could say, like, oh, well, do everything you can so that you're not hot and sweaty. But I finally just said, screw it. I'm just going to accept that, like, it's fine to be sweaty. And so
mm.
now when I wake up in the night hot and sweaty, I was like, oh, that feels nice. Okay. And I just fall right back asleep.
Wow.
Yeah, so not fighting with this stuff and
Yeah.
accepting what is really
Yeah.
allows it to just slide by, not engage your conscious mind on it, and just let you fall
Mhm.
back asleep, which is, of course, another thing that meditation teaches you, which is acceptance of what is.
So true. Talk a little bit more about anxiety, the neuroscience of anxiety and fear. Um, how do we overcome it? And I like what you were just talking about because it's like you don't resist it. Like stop fighting with the thoughts. I agree with you. I agree with you 100% on that one. It's like we battle like, oh my God, why am I having this thought? I shouldn't be having this. We challenge the thoughts. We get upset about the thoughts. So what else can you teach us about anxiety and fear?
Sure. And on that note, Carl Jung has this very famous phrase: what we resist persists. So
Mhm.
the more you spend time engaging in the thing that's not working, that you're frustrated at, the more you're actually maintaining it, maintaining your
So
attention
true.
on it, and rising your
So
anxiety
true.
and your
So
feelings about it.
true. So true.
So this principle that you brought up is actually key for being able to manage and let go of anxiety. So
Mm.
we talked a little bit about the amygdala, part of your brain that fires when something is wrong.
Mhm.
When you have a lot of anxiety, your brain is firing in a way that is probably not connected to what's really going on in reality. And the cycle that happens is your brain sees something that it perceives as dangerous. Let's call it a picture of a snake. So your brain sees a picture of a snake. It then fires, oh no, there's a snake. Then you get a sensation of fear in your body. Your amygdala, through your HPA axis, signals to your body for a rise of cortisol and the sensation of fear. And then that fear that you feel in your body serves to then reinforce the amygdala in the thought, because you go, oh, I felt fear. Um, there must be something wrong. And then your amygdala jumps onto that. And it's like, oh, yes, there is something wrong. Remember that snake? That snake is the wrong thing. And then you get more anxiety,
Yeah.
sensation. Then you have more thought, more sensation, more thought, and it feeds forward. The
Mm.
trick with anxiety is to realize that it is just a broken alarm. So, your anxiety alarm is firing like, oh my God, snake, snake, snake. But
Mhm.
it's a broken alarm. It's just a picture of a snake. It's totally fine. Maybe it's even a picture of a garter snake. It's things really neutral, but we
Yeah.
get caught up in
Not
it.
a boa constrictor. It's not a rattlesnake. Yeah.
And it's not even real.
Yeah. It's not
And
even real.
this is such a metaphor for all of our anxiety thoughts. It's telling you it's dangerous, so it feels dangerous in your body. So you believe that there's danger, but actually there's no danger there. So let me give you one of my favorite sort of pictures of anxiety. And that is that you live in an apartment building where the fire alarm went off. So you live on the 7th floor, the fire alarm goes off one day. What do? You go, oh no, there must be a fire. You grab your hat and your coat and you run out to the street, and everybody's out there waiting for the fire truck, but actually, nope, just a broken alarm. Okay. You go back in, next day, the same thing happens. You go, oh, grab your hat and coat, you run outside. Third day, same thing. At this point, you're like, this is probably not real. Day 7, day 12, day 15, the alarm still goes off. And when it does, you're like, I know this thing is broken. I know it's not real. It's really annoying. And you're just sitting there watching Oprah, making your eggs, wishing the alarm would stop and knowing that there's no problem and not having that same fear response. So anxiety is just a broken alarm. Your amygdala sees something that it believes is scary and will send all the signals. And it's your job as the sentient human behind there to go, oh, I feel the sensations, I hear the thoughts, but actually all of that is just a broken alarm. And I can sit here while it rises, it falls, it does its little flurry. And if I don't get sucked into it, if I don't take those thoughts and follow them and make them bigger, if I don't take those feelings and get scared of the feelings and amplify them, if I don't do any of that, over time, it just dissipates.
That's really good.
Yeah, it can just be an annoying thing that happens, like a broken alarm. It's not pleasant, but you just sit there and it goes away. It doesn't mean anything. And the problem is that we create meaning and we get sucked in by the feelings and sucked in by the thoughts, which is totally natural. That's a very, very, very normal thing to do. And ignoring it is not intuitive and not obvious, but it is the path out of it.
Isn't the amygdala, how many years ago and old is it? Like, and it never updated in our brain versus the prefrontal cortex, which is the newer part of the brain, right? Like the amygdala is just this old fear.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like, we need that prefrontal cortex to get stronger, which is why, again, meditation is so, so huge when it comes to anxiety. The way you're talking about it makes so much sense. So thank you. That's
my pleasure.
Really good stuff.
Because to take it back to our earlier understanding of meditation, so in meditation, you have the thoughts that come, you rise up above them, you notice that you're having thoughts and you don't get sucked in. You say, oh, you're a thought, you can just go away, and you bring your attention back to something else.
So true. And I talk about this a lot. Like, we give things meaning. It's like, what part of the brain wants to give everything meaning and figure it out? It's like, I need to understand that. So I'm going to give it meaning. And it's not true. Like, we live with all these stories and assumptions, and it really makes our mood go up or down, but we forget how powerful that we are, that we can actually choose our thoughts, like consciously choose the thought, just consciously choose not to give something meaning. And we can actually have much more peace in our lives, but we fall victim to our thoughts all the time as humans, right?
Yes, we fall victim, so well said. And we fall victim both to our thoughts and to our feelings. Yeah. And we assume that because we feel this way, we feel scared, that there must be something wrong. And then we start to create stories around it. Stories like, oh, pictures of snakes are terrible. I never want to see a picture of snakes because it makes me feel so bad.
Right.
Whereas in reality, the thing is benign. There's nothing wrong with it. And if we relabel our experience of it and say, hey, I got a rise in a false fear reaction, and I know that I don't need to make meaning out of it. I don't need to make it a big deal. It just happened. The next time you look at a snake, you can come back to it with a much more rational perspective. You might get a little bit of a titter in your stomach. And then the third time you do it, it's probably going to be fine. And once you change your perspective and you stop creating the meaning of that benign thing being so terrible.
This is just occurring to me, and I have a question for the neuroscientist on the call today. I have a
Sure.
question for you. Do you think that someone that gets really triggered all the time, or their moods are up and down, up and down, up and down, it's because they're falling into meaning or giving things story or following their feelings. Is it that their prefrontal cortex is smaller? Is that what you would conclude?
Nope, not necessarily.
Okay.
You just may not be practiced at the act of observing what's going on and shifting out of it.
Yeah.
So, the prefrontal cortex has so many functions. It is our inhibitory function, so it keeps us from doing stupid things and saying stupid things.
Yeah.
It is our planning, our organizing, our long-term thinking. There's many, many functions, the prefrontal cortex. Attention is just one of them.
Mhm.
And one of the things that may be happening in somebody who has a hyper reactive emotional state is that they've spent a long time engaging with that emotional state, and therefore the part of their brain body that responds to that has been wired to respond to it very quickly.
They're wired that. Okay.
And so some of that can be from birth. Some people genetically are much more sensitive. Some of it has to do with hormonal makeup. I mean, as a woman, I can attest that for 2 weeks of the month, I am far more emotional than the other 2 weeks. And that's fascinating because it shows you how simply a shift in your hormones, a very, very tiny shift in the chemical makeup of your body at that moment, changes how you feel and how you react to things in your emotional state. And so, that's both empowering in one sense, because it means that things that are really emotional one day can be benign the next day. So you can actually choose how you react to it. It's like, oh, this thing actually is benign. And if I would just, if I'm in a different chemical state, then I can see that it's benign. It can feel a little disempowering because you're like, oh no, well, it's just my hormones that are telling me how to feel. It can also be really inspiring. It's like, wow, I get to feel different ways in the world. I get to feel what it's like to, experience this more rationally, and I get to feel what it's like to experience this more emotionally.
I like that. So it's how we're wired, and we can change that, which is so empowering.
We can change that. We can accept that.
Yep.
We can change our relationship to it.
Yeah.
There are many things. We can enjoy it. We can
stop pushing against it. Just notice how we're showing up in the world. I love that. It's really good stuff. This was so, so good. Is there anything else that you feel that we need to know about? Anything at all?
So many things, and happy to come back and talk about them.
I know.
But if I had, one last word, it is that the thoughts in your mind and the emotions in your body don't need to trap you into yourself and into a small way of living your life.
Ooh, that was profound. That was really good.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you. Particularly as women, we tend to be like, oh, I'm not good enough. Women tend to have higher levels of anxiety than men, which can keep us from doing things because it's like, oh, well, that makes me feel scared or anxious. But the reality is that when you push through those fears, when you shift your relationship to them, when you quiet the voices in your head, there's an incredible amount of freedom that is created. And you are not bad or wrong for having anxiety or having these thoughts. They're all completely normal. It's, it's just life. But you can start to introduce some flexibility in how you deal with them by shifting your response.
Really good. That's a great final point. Thank you. Thank you so much. So where would people find you? If they want more information on Muse or you, or if it's all the same website, let us know.
Sure. So you can find more about Muse, the brain sensing headband that helps you meditate and sleep, at choosemuse.com. That's CHOOSEMUSE.com. You can find us on the socials at @choosemuse, and my own Instagram is Ariel's Musings. And then I also have a podcast that talks all about the brain and meditation and how to use those concepts to improve your life. And it's called Untangle.
Love that. And you are so kind because you are giving us a discount if anyone that would like to go buy a Muse it is pod 10 for 10% off, POD, and then the number 10. So thank you for that. We really, really appreciate that. And I have one final question for you. So what do? This podcast is all about living as emotionally healthy adults. And I think I know your answer already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So what do you do in order to help yourself maintain really positive emotional health?
So it was obvious, the
It's
answer
obvious,
is meditation. A practice that I do every day, using Muse, which has a whole range of different meditations. So I explore different meditation forms regularly. It might be guided, it might be focused attention meditation, it might be heart-centered meditation, breathing meditation. And all of these are kind of like little mini workouts for different parts of my brain, body, and mind in order to teach me to not get sucked in by those thoughts and to be able to live happily and calmly in my everyday.
Ooh, beautiful. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you being on today. This was, so informative. And we hope that someday you'll come back and join us again on the Adult Chair.
I would love that. It was such a joy to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that you all enjoyed that show and you learned something about the brain and sleep. And of course, Muse, which is an incredible device. I encourage you all to check it out. I will have everything you need right in the show notes for today's show. And do not forget, head on over to theadultchair.com/Nashville if you would like to get more information and sign up for the upcoming Adult Chair Workshop live event in Nashville, Tennessee, November 3rd through 5th. We would love to have you. We are getting close to closing it out. So please, please, please check it out and sign up in a hurry. All right. Have a beautiful rest of your week. I will see you seated right here next week in the Adult Chair.